but you never steer me wrong. So lead on, good shepherd, lead on.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the For His Name's Sake podcast, where we talk about leadership skills for this generation that we can use not only in their church, school, and community, but most importantly, their entire Christian walk. And so today, I was planning on having a guest with me. However, things came up, and I'm by myself now. But we're going to continue our purpose series for this week, next week, and the week after that. So 3 more weeks. And today we're going to continue to go through the Bible and pick out some people and leaders in the world, in the ancient world, and in the Bible, and talking about their purpose that they found, that it was God's purpose and not their own purpose. And so today I want to talk about David. Now we know David, he grew up as a shepherd, and he was just a shepherd boy. He was the littlest of all of his brothers, and he was out in the field, and then he was anointed to be the next king. And then he became the next king, or before he became the next king, he defeated Goliath, right? The giant of the Philistines, and he threw the stones. He had 5, but he only threw 1, and it knocked him and it defeated him. And then later on in his life, he became king. And when he was king, he did some pretty bad things, but he was still a man after God's own heart. And so today, I'm going to read in 1 Samuel chapter 16, but also I'm going to read a verse from Acts. And so it says in verse 7, "But the Lord said to Samuel, do not look on his appearance or on the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For the Lord sees not as the man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart." You know, just looking at that verse, I mean, just thinking about how we, as looking for a leader, maybe looking for someone to step up, we look at the outside. We look at the things that, really don't matter at the end of the day, do they? We look at things that are fleeting, things that are not worth, honestly. Because when we look for a leader, when we are trying to spot out someone, it's not by their action, but it's by their heart. What we do in leadership should not be based on to get a position or maybe to show off, hey, I'm serving, look, I'm doing this thing, I'm doing all these things. But no, it's rather, what's your motive? What's your heart behind this thing that you're doing? Why do you want to do this thing? Are you doing it for yourself? Are you doing it for God? Are you doing it to reach others? Or are you just doing it to gather a following? We have to look at a man's heart, maybe not his outside, because maybe his outward appearance isn't that impressive. Like David, he was a shepherd boy. They went through literally all of his siblings. And the priest said, "No, none of these are the one. Do you have any other children?" And they said, "Yes, David, he's just a shepherd boy." The priest said, "Bring him." And man was judging David by his outward appearance. How could David, this little boy, be the next king when we have all these other men that have the looks, they have the talent? Why would we pick a little boy? We think about in our lives how often maybe we were trying to impress somebody. Maybe we had the right heart behind something. Maybe we had the right motives, but our outward appearance wasn't that impressive. Maybe our actions that we didn't catch the eye of anybody, but we were still patient. Then we go down to verse 11, and it says, "Then Samuel said to Jesse, Are all your sons here?" And he said, "There remains yet the youngest, but behold, he is keeping the sheep." And Samuel said to Jesse, "Send and get him, for we will not sit down until he comes here." And he sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy and had beautiful eyes and was handsome. And the Lord said, "Arise, anoint him, for this is he." Then Samuel took the horn of the oil and anointed him in the midst of his brothers, and the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon David from that day forward. And Samuel rose up and went to Ramah. Just think about that, how, as I said, that he was just the other child, as it said. He's just the other one. Has no specific importance, that he's just a shepherd boy. That he has no really important need. He has nothing flashy, nothing showy. He's not in the front of everybody. He's not the most popular. Really, nobody ever knows him. Because it's interesting that his father didn't even bring him before the priest. He was just not even there. But we have to remember in our lives that maybe everything happens for a reason. And I think it's so interesting that it points out that he was a shepherd boy. When we talked about being a shepherd, Psalm 23 talks about the Lord is my shepherd and I shall not want. And I feel like there's a parallel here that David being a shepherd boy and the one that was chosen to be king by Samuel, maybe he was supposed to be a leader because he was a shepherd. Now, that's maybe not true, but I feel like that's an interesting parallel that, the Lord is our shepherd and he's the leader of our life. And David, he was a shepherd and that he became the leader of his people. Of course, everybody that becomes a leader is not going to be a shepherd, but I think that's an interesting parallel that the shepherd is the leader. They lead the flock. They take care of the people that need help. They take care of their sheep. They lead them to green pastures and water that they can drink. And even if one of them gets lost, they'll go and find it. And I feel like David had done the same thing. It shows that he had the potential to be a great leader. And right after that, in the next chapter, it talks about David and Goliath, how he's been the one chosen to be next king. And now they're looking at the Philistines on the other side of the valley, you could suppose, and they don't know what to do. Because Goliath comes out, and who's going to challenge me? Who will stand up to me? Who will stand up to the great giant Goliath? But David and all the people of Israel are freaking out. It's like, what are we going to do? None of us can fight him. But David's like, I can. And he goes down and picks up some stones, and he goes up to Goliath, not even afraid, slings the stone, and on the first shot, he hit him. On the first shot, he hit Goliath. Facing the giants, facing the things in your life that are in front of you. They're not behind you anymore, but they're in front of you. There's a quote that says, there's a God bigger that's behind me, supporting me, than the giants that are in front of me in my life. And I think that's so true, because how often in leadership and just in regular life that things come up, things happen, and it's like a roadblock. It's like we can't go any further because there's a wall in front of us, and it's a giant wall. We can't go around it. We can't climb over it. The only way to go through it is through it. And we think in our lives how difficult that is sometimes, but we have to remember that the God that's with us and the God that's for us, that can't be against us, will get us through that wall. Will get us through those trying times, those situations that we get stuck in, the things that really hinder us. He'll help us push through. And with David, he helped him defeat a giant. Helped him defeat a giant. A little boy helped and defeated a giant only with God's help. And he prepared by bringing more stones, but God knew it only would need one. David became a hero. He became king. But when he became king, he made some bad decisions. When he saw Bathsheba on the roof, and he committed adultery. And then not even adultery, but murder, because he killed her husband in war while he was staying home, when he should have been out with his warriors fighting. And think about the sin that he committed and how that ruined, and he rent his clothes and he asked for forgiveness and God gave it to him. But just think about how many times in leadership that we screw up. We mess up bad. And there's some things that in leadership we might have to step down for the greater good, but there's times in leadership where we make the wrong decision, whether big or small. Maybe we should have done one thing or another. But instead we did this thing. And then it comes back on us and it's our fault. We have to remember that God is with us. He's the God of all grace and mercy and forgiveness. And that if we keep running back to Him and we have a desire to do right, not just to keep doing wrong and do wrong and then ask for forgiveness, no, but a desire to do right, He'll forgive us. But we have to have that desire. And then it says in verse 36 that for David, after he had, or in verse 36 in Acts chapter 13, it says, for David, after he had served the purpose of God in his own generation. We've been talking about purpose. And it's very interesting that all the way in Acts, David's mentioned. He said, after he had served the purpose of God. David, it wasn't David's purpose for his life. It wasn't his family's purpose, because his family didn't even bring him until Samuel asked. It wasn't his nation's purpose. The nation would have never picked a little shepherd boy that was a kid to be their king. But it was God's purpose. That God could take someone as small as David, that was a nobody to everyone, and that He'd take that nobody and make him a somebody to use for God's glory. And there's a song that says, I'm just a nobody trying to tell everybody all about somebody who saved my soul. And how David, who was a nobody, that became a somebody to tell everybody what God did for him and what God's purpose was for his life, and not but their life as well. And how every time in our lives we don't know where to go, we don't know where to turn, but God has a purpose, just like He did David. And we might say, like David, we're not qualified. We are the littlest of little. We're nowhere to be a leader. We don't deserve it. We don't know how. We don't know what to do. Well, just think about David. How he was called, but he wasn't equipped for it. But God will equip the called. He won't call the equipped every time. And we have to realize that David wasn't equipped, but he was called. And he was called for God's purpose and not his own purpose. And that he strove to do what God wanted to do. And that's how we see all the way in the New Testament, hundreds and hundreds of years later, that David had served the purpose of God. That he had done what God had wanted him to do. And after that, God got the glory. So remember, in our lives, we might not be the most equipped, but God can get us through it. You might not be equipped, but God can still call you. So I want to show you one thing. Finally, I have some very exciting news. I have the For His Name's Sake book. I am thrilled. I am tickled to death, and I am just, I don't even know what to say. It's been so long. It's been over a year, almost a year and a half since we started this project, and that's what the front cover looks like. And then the back has our mission statement and our authors, and it's just a really great book. I'm really excited how God can use this, and I'm so excited to reveal this at National to people, and hopefully we can use this in our churches, and hopefully it can impact a generation. But I just wanted to show y'all that I am thrilled to do that. And if you are interested, if you have my number, text me. And if you have Instagram, just DM me, and I will make sure you get a copy, because we're going to go pick up the rest of them in 2 weeks in Tennessee. So excited for that. But I'm excited that many people can use this to impact a generation. But thank y'all for joining today. I'm so excited y'all were here listening, and I hope y'all have a good rest of the week. Thank you for all you do for me, and thank you for praying for me. and I hope to see y'all next week, continuing our purpose series. Thank y'all.
Good shepherd, I'll follow all my